everybody, welcome back to I Will Be Okay Thursday. It's October 1st. It's my favorite month of the year leading up to my favorite holiday. And so for each video I make for this month, I will be wearing a costume which correlates to the topic of which I speak about. And for this particular video, I'll be talking about why I'm not exactly afraid to die. Now actually, I'm much more afraid of the fact that our president has the vocabulary of a 4th grader. But anyway, let's get started. So I was born into a Mexican-Polish family on the south side of Chicago, as I've mentioned in previous videos. And particularly in Mexican culture, there's quite a different view of death. It's not so morbid, it's not so taboo in comparison to American society. For example, Dia de los Muertos, we literally go to a cemetery and we have a picnic and a party with the dead. So the dead are not really seen as this, really scary thing, but as souls that you still can spend time with, that the dead are ancestors that you can still connect to, and that really death is more of a transition. But overall, this tone in Western society is that we're really afraid of death. Like, we're always figuring out these ways to live longer, and we're always figuring out these ways to deny that death happens. A lot of people are extremely afraid to die because, as well, a lot of people are taught that, like, when you die, either you're gonna go to heaven or you're gonna go to hell because you're either a good person or you're a shitty person. But that comes down to, I guess, like, spiritual beliefs, but to be honest, I think it's a crock of poo. Societies that deny death tend to become harmful and superficial, because when you don't accept that one day you are going to die, then you believe you're kind of like invincible. I feel like life takes on a little bit of a heavier tone when you forget that one day you're gonna die. When you really accept that fact, that literally one day you will not be here anymore, a certain kind of lightness comes in. A little bit of a seriousness is lost, where you kind of think to yourself, like, one day I'm gonna die, and I may look back on my life and think, like, damn, why did I waste my time with these people, with this person, in this job, or whatever. We die multiple times throughout our lives. At least that's the goal. We die to our past selves. We die to previous, relationships. We die to situations. And somebody who understands that, I think, would also realize that I think that continues after we leave this physical plane. So for all my science people out there, I love science. I think science is one of the greatest human constructs we have ever created because it's helped us understand so many things about the universe that we didn't understand before. Now, if you're familiar with the law of thermodynamics, you know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It could literally only transform. Everything in our universe is energy. We are energy, we feel energy. When we pass away, when our bodies are no longer working, where does our energy go? It can't be destroyed. It can only transform. Now, where it goes after that transformation, people have come up with all these things about it, but the truth is that nobody actually for sure knows. And that's kind of the beautiful thing, and so I'll kind of tell you my thoughts about that. One of my favorite books written by Eckhart Tolle is called Stillness Speaks, and in that book he has a chapter on death and the eternal. And basically in that chapter what he says is that death is transformation. He says that the opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth. Life is eternal. And he goes on to talk about how if you go into a forest and you see, broken down, decaying trees, and you look there, you see microorganisms still at work. And where those microorganisms are at work, molecules are rearranging themselves. So really what we see here is a metamorphosis of the tree. A lot of people, I think, are afraid to die because we don't know what happens next, right? And the truth is that nobody knows. People will tell you, oh, you go to heaven, you go to hell, you meet with an angel, you do this, blah, 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 blah. But the truth of it is that I think everybody has their own experience. Just as everybody has their own experience here, I don't think that that changes when we transform out of this life. Now, I believe that whatever is happening in this life in your mind, psychologically, you will carry over. Whatever you don't correct, your regrets, all of those things, lessons that you didn't learn, things that you still carry with you will continue to be with you. Now, a really amazing book, which is called the Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dead. Basically, the book talks about how the Tibetan monks, when someone is about to pass, they basically set up like a ritual and prep the death for transitioning into the next plane. So Jung has an incredible commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Living and the Dead, and in that commentary he talks a lot about how our psyche, so when we're born, carries stuff into our being from our ancestors. So he talks about psychic heredity, so being inclined to particular traits of character, having special gifts. Like, we think that the psyche is only personal and subjective, but one of Carl Jung's greatest gifts to psychology is really in his theories talking about how the psyche is not just personal. Now, of course, there's this whole like nature versus nurture argument, which is quite outdated at this point in time. But I think that, of course, there are elements of like things that you're taught, but I really believe that there are things that you express in this world, the type of person that you are, that really doesn't have much to do with your environment as it does to do with something internal. Very interesting, one of Jung's points in that commentary, which I would just like to bring up as a side note, as he says that if somebody passes away heavily identified with their sexual impulses when they're born, and as a child they will more easily form Oedipal complexes, so have like very sexual feelings towards their parents, which don't make any sense. So it's kind of in a way like that karma being, you know, carried over from a past life, which the person did not correct and is meant to correct in this current life. Now, I'm somebody who absolutely believes in reincarnation. My personal beliefs is that if you are born into this world, you are meant to be here to learn lessons, to correct your behavior, and to hopefully transition to the next plane of existence. And I think that if you don't learn the lessons that your soul set out for you to learn while you were here, you will have to repeat it. So back to Stillness Speaks. In this book, Eckhart Tolle brings up an incredible point. He says, consider this, if there were only one color, let us say blue, and the entire world and everything in it were blue, then there would be no blue. There needs to be something that is not blue, so that blue can be recognized. Otherwise, it would not stand out, would not exist. In the same way, does it not require something that is not fleeting and impermanent for the fleetingness of all things to be recognized? In other words, if everything, including yourself, was impermanent, would you even know it? Does the fact that you are aware of and can witness the short-lived nature of all forms, including your own, not mean that there is something in you that is not subject to decay? Basically, what he's saying is that by being able to recognize that there is an impermanence also means that there's something in this world which is not impermanent. And what is that? I personally believe that that is our souls. I believe that our souls will always be eternal, even though their expressions may be different at different points in space and time. My first experience with death was when I was 10 years old and my grandmother passed away from cancer. I was very, very close to my grandmother. She had a huge influence on me. She is the person who influenced me to tell stories, and quite frankly, I don't know who I would be without her. I remember as a child like learning how to grapple with that idea, you know, so young, that I'm like, I'm never gonna, you know, call this person on the phone again. I'm never gonna put together a puzzle with her again. You know, like these little moments that you'll never have with that person again. I remember one day like running around outside, and suddenly I had this peace like overcome me, and it was a little bit illogical. I don't know what brought it on. It was just a sudden feeling and this sudden knowing that although she may not be there with me physically, that she would always be there with me in my heart, and that through the things that she taught me, I'd be able to carry that on in this world. And so even energetically on some level, she's always with me. And I actually ended up having a dream where I was in my room and there was a painting on my wall, and the eyes in the painting started moving, and she came out of the painting and she was holding a blue box with white stars on it, and she was looking at it, and she looked so beautiful and so healthy, and she was wearing this like blue flowing dress, and she was floating over my bed, and she said, "Tasha, everything's gonna be okay." You know, so I've seen ghosts. I feel things all the time. So my view of death is not exactly your standard American's view of it. Death is not something that I feel like I'm afraid of. I don't want to die. I want to be alive. I very much do. As much as things are crazy right now in our world, I do think it's very meaningful, and I think that life is one of the most beautiful disasters that we get to partake in, and for some reason we are here, and I completely honor that, but I also honor when it is time for me to go. I think one of the greatest gifts in life would be to complete all of its stages. So to get to the point where you are of old age and decaying and dying is a beautiful thing, because you've got to go through all the cycles of life in that point, and how fortunate are you to be able to experience all of that. I think as well, one of the things that helps me to feel like I'm not afraid to die is right at this point in my life right now, I can look back at my life and I'm so proud of the things that I've done, and I am so happy with the experiences I was able to have. And I think that by being able to look back on your life with satisfaction should also help ease some fear on dying. Like I said, I don't want to die, but I'm kind of excited for when it happens, because I'm really curious as to what will happen. If you're afraid of death, then work on yourself, and I think that will ease the fear. If you're afraid of death, I would say come up with your own ideas about it, because I think that we carry over our thoughts, our beliefs, and our experiences, especially from everything I've researched. So many people are like, I had a near-death experience and I saw Jesus, I saw Buddha, I saw nothing, I felt so loved. Everybody has their own experience. And so my conclusion from, doing all this research and hearing about so many different people's experiences is that you have to try and make your experience the best that it can be now, so that you carry that over into the next plane of existence. A very powerful meditation that you can do is to really sit with yourself and deeply accept the fact that your life is impermanent. And really sitting with this many times, I've been able to kind of see situations a little bit differently. There's certain things with my family which I take more seriously, because I kind of just always have that awareness. My parents call me all the time and I get annoyed, but I always remind myself, I'm like, one day, I'm going to be really sad that I didn't answer as many calls as possible from my parents or try to call them back. And I try to spend time with people that I really love, especially elders, because I feel like maybe I'll look back and regret that I didn't try harder. So this kind of mentality is something that really keeps me motivated. This mentality of my future elderly self / after I die, looking back on my life, is a perspective that I keep in mind so much, and it's something that has really assisted me in being able to have the life that I have. Thank you so much for watching, and I just want to give a special shout out to people who have been continuously watching my videos, sending me encouraging words to keep going. It really means so much to me, and I cannot say that enough. So thank you for your continuous support. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next week.